Welcome back to the table. Today, Ryan and I are taking a look at Harrow County. This is the next game from Off the Page Games, and it's as unique probably as Mind Management. It's a completely different type of game.
It is very different, but yeah, they did Mind Management, which is one of my favorite games. This is another graphic novel series, Harrow County from Cullen Bunn. If you didn't make the connection, Off the Page Games, they're adapting a lot of printed material into board games. And so this, I think, is just their second game, and it's adapting that story of Harrow County, which is, for those who have never read the book, this kind of story, again, almost like good versus evil, kind of. You have this town that is under attack from an evil force known as the Family, which David is got here in front of him.
Of course, I'm the evil one.
And there's the other side, which is the Protectors. Now, there's a lot more to the story of this world. There's an evil witch that was killed, and there's the potential of magical power in this world, and there's these forces, almost like shadow creatures called haints, that both sides control, that are an important part of this setting, and you're basically using these creatures out on the board to do your bidding. But it is, I would say, an incredibly asymmetric game.
Yeah, very asymmetric, and I do want to touch on that theme just a little bit more. It has, would you say, sort of an American Gothic-y sort of thing going on?
Say that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's witchcraft involved. There's like potential rebirth of a witch involved, and the townsfolk are. It's one of those sorts of things where there's two sides fighting viciously over sort of countryside, but also there are evil, demonic things at play.
Yeah, the two sides have very different powers, very different goals in the game. I've got the Protectors in front of me, which is represented by all the red pieces on the board here. And the Protectors are trying to get to these civilians and rescue them by escorting them back to your home base. Meanwhile, the Family, they can summon storms, and they're trying to destroy the county.
Yeah, the storms are going to make things a little bit more difficult for the Protectors. But this is what I'm trying to do, is link these out to those buildings and destroy those buildings, all the while making the terrain a little bit more challenging for you.
Yeah, and like I said, it's completely asymmetric, but even with that, the actual gameplay, the turn-to-turn gameplay, is similar for these two factions in that we're going to be doing some of the same actions on our turn. They're just going to play out differently. And I say these two factions because this is kind of a campaign. You're going to play over the course of several scenarios. Some of those scenarios introduce new characters, new factions, new components, new goals, a lot of stuff, but we're really going to focus on kind of the start of the game or chapter 1 here, and then kind of maybe tease some of the other stuff that comes in. But this is definitely kind of the core game right here.
Yeah, this is what we have set up right now. This is chapter 1, and like Ryan said, we're going to be taking actions, and on par with the theme, those actions are on mason jars on this board here. We're going to be taking turns alternating using a mason jar. We have the same mason jars. However, the mason jars are going to operate a little bit differently for us, and probably even more so for as the game expands.
Yeah, it's very unique because one of the main things you're doing is taking actions, but you're collecting these tokens from the board to power up your actions and effectively make them better. If you see here on the Protectors player board, you have these 3 lines for the 3 different types of actions. There's a spawn action, which lets you spawn out these little helpers. There's a move action, which lets you move your figures across the board. And there's a strengthen action, which is going to allow you to strengthen your presence in battle. And that's going to let you take these cubes and add them to this battleground over here. All of that's fine. But what's so different about these factions is that I'm collecting these tokens to actually bring them onto my player board and power up each individual action. Whenever I do the action mason jar, I get to choose one of these actions and do it to its full power. So no matter what, on my turn, I'm just doing one of these 3 possible actions. Granted, I could do them really well, but I only get to do one.
Yeah.
Yours is vastly different.
The Families works quite a bit differently. So I'm going to be collecting the tiles as well and putting them on my player board, but they're going to kind of continue to stack and stack up because when I take that same action, I'm drawing tiles out of the bag and using all the actions on those tiles one at a time. So there's no sort of strength or power to them, but I'm potentially going to be taking lots of actions. Now, there are, I think, 8 in here, so you're going to get a max of 6 actions. I draw these out and then I use them. These tiles go back in the bag, but these tiles here that I can collect are basically going to strengthen my family or my faction in a similar but very different way.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's so different. The way that you play this out, because getting them to do one action really powerful is good, but the family has that flexibility. You're drawing like 4 action tiles, and they could be all of the different actions represented, and you get to choose the order you take them.
Right.
So you can really time for some big actions on your turn that the protectors just can't do.
Yeah, while my faction has a little bit more of a variety on their turn when you use the abilities action, it doesn't include fighting, which is a whole separate action using a mason jar here.
Yeah, it's a whole separate mason jar.
You're just going to flip that over to basically create a battle. Now, you have to have moved around the board to a situation where you can actually have some combat, and you're basically going to be looking at one of the hexes on the board, and that's where the battleground comes into play.
Yeah, and this is something you're going to have to set up for, like David said. Each one of these units has a different range, and it's going to be a little bit different based on whether you're attacking one of these helper haints or the actual character, which is called a legend. But not only are we going to be using this battle board, this is one of the coolest things.
You notice the box isn't on our wall.
You're actually going to be using the box. And if you see this here and this up here, this is actually a dice tower. And it's like a Shogun-style dice tower, for lack of a better word, where some of the cubes that you drop in this tower are going to get stuck here. So every time you have a battle, you're going to look at all those cubes. I talked about strengthening and taking some cubes and placing them here in this battleground. You're going to gather all of the cubes that are present, and you're going to drop them through that dice tower. Now, whoever has the most strength is going to get some bonus cubes. So if I was being attacked 2-to-1, I would get 1 extra cube. But you're going to take all of the players' cubes, and you're going to drop them into the top of the box. Now, what this means is, so look at that. So that's a great example.
Some got stuck.
A lot got stuck. So even though red looked like they had the most cubes, after they were dropped through, blue actually won that fight. However, now this means there are more red cubes stuck in there.
Yeah.
So next time, there's a really good chance that red is going to win that fight. And you're actually spending these cubes to potentially kill off the opponent's characters. So battling is a huge part of the game. You really need to attack each other for a couple different reasons. One being, you really want to get these haints off the board, because my goal as the protectors is to create chains of these haints that connect all the way out to these people, so I can transport them across my train all the way back to the home base and score them. So if the family can take out even one link in that chain, that messes up my whole plan. Like, I've got to have to go back and refocus that. So it is definitely a very PvP aggressive game. You're going to be taking that attack action a lot.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we are focused on those 2 goals. He wants to get these civilians back. I want to destroy the buildings. All the things that you're doing in between are effectively to better your chances of progress towards that, or to hurt the other player's chances in progress.
Yeah, and each one of our faction characters are going to kind of help us in that pursuit. And that's the third action, which is going to let you activate your legend. Every legend has their own unique ability. Emmy here can actually put out barbed wire tokens onto the board, which are going to either prevent people from moving onto there or making it easier, making it part of my chain to move. So as you play through the campaign, if you unlock different character boards that come in to replace Emmy, you could be getting some different powers here. Emmy lets me actually put out cubes onto the board and collect them in order to power up my battles as well. So it's very unique seeing how these powers kind of work together.
Yeah, the cubes out there kind of are effectively our reserve for the battle. You can't just take all the cubes out there, but if you're near or on the ones that have cubes, you're able to add them to the battle. And maybe being kind of like tilting the odds in your favor with the other player really noticing that. My ability is all about these storms. At first, you're just going to be placing the storm until you've got Levi powered up. That's all you're going to be doing. So you're going to be placing a storm right there where your legend is.
Yeah.
And then effectively, as you power that up, you're going to be able to place, you're going to be able to suck different things into the storm. So you're effectively going to be able to manipulate this board. So that chain that he's trying to build, I could have a storm that kind of pulls that apart a little bit, making him have to move it back into place, or maybe change his plans altogether.
Yeah, there's very much a push and pull in these abilities and the way they trigger, because those storms can really, they can mess with all your planning, because they can pull these tokens away from me as well as the actual people that I'm trying to rescue. And then Levi has an ability too that lets him move his haints out. But again, that ability is going to be subject to whoever you're controlling at the time. You're going to introduce those new characters. You're going to get a choice to decide which character to use when you're using that particular family faction.
Right, and the last action is a wild action. Now, this works as kind of in a cool way.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a little different than what I'd initially expected. When you flip that over, we both start with a wild token.
Yep.
But when you flip it over, you're going to take another wild token, and then you're going to take individual wild actions of those ability actions that we talked about earlier to the number of wild tokens that you have at that moment.
Right, so the first time you do that action, you're going to take a second one, and then you're going to get to 2 wild actions. If you do it again in a future round, you'll take a third wild, and you'll do 3 wild actions. Now, these are not as powerful for either of us. We're not getting crazy, huge bonuses to these actions, but it gives you that flexibility, kind of like the family already has.
Right, exactly.
I could potentially move one, I could potentially summon one, and I could potentially strengthen all in the same round if I take that wild action. But even though there are 4 of those mason jars, you're only going to get to do 3 actions on your turn. At the end of your 3 actions, after both players have done the 3 actions, that's when you're actually going to check for scoring. So I better hope that after we're done, that I have still maintained this chain, and so that I could potentially save one of these people to score points over on the scoreboard.
Yeah, because when you do, you're going to score something like 2 points. When you do that, I will conversely score 2 points if I've destroyed a building. And then there is a little bit of a king of the hill mechanic here, sort of in the middle, in the brambles.
Yeah, if you have one of your characters on the brambles, whoever controls that at the end of the round also gets 1 point.
Yeah.
So potentially there are a few different ways to score points. Even if you're doing really poorly on your goal, you could still get at least 1 point. But the victory margin for Chapter 1 is 7 points. So whoever's actually completing their objective is going to have a much better time of doing that.
And like we said, that is just Chapter 1 that we've been talking about. We've alluded to some of the things. In fact, get some of the components over there.
Definitely, like I said, there's a ton more characters that are going to get introduced. Some new components. You're going to have some bonus tiles that slot out there that allow you to take special powers. You have this spoon that's going to come into play later. And you even have some wildly different factions.
Yeah.
In fact, there's this one faction, Hester, who is the witch kind of reborn, who's only playable if you decide to play a 3-player game. There's a special scenario for 3 players where she's wildly different. Like, she's actually just kind of taking control of other people's haints and using them and interacting with the board in a completely different way than all the other characters, which is vastly interesting. And there's a 4th little hidden faction I don't want to talk too much about.
I don't know if that information is out there.
There is at least another 4th faction in here with all the faction components and things like that as well. So there's definitely a lot to explore, and for fans of Harrow County, you get these factions, these characters. I mean, everything
be very familiar.
Yeah, even the artwork is all based on the comic book, so you're gonna feel right at home if you're a fan of Harrow County. And I'm excited to play through the whole campaign. And a lot like Mind Management, they've kind of gotten into that habit of like just having stuff that unlocks over a campaign.
Yeah, I think we'll probably see from Off the Page Games that being part of their DNA. Yeah. Their games are going to be something to begin with that build over the course of a few plays or maybe many plays. But if you have any questions at all, please make them in the comments below. We will try to get down there and answer what we can, what we're allowed to answer anyway. But until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.